Dear people of St. Henry, after celebrating the Feast of Independence of our country, July 4th, I thought it was a good time to reach out to all of you again. These weeks of summer have been extraordinarily challenging for our country, and back on the Feast of Pentecost, I spoke about how much the Lord needs each one of us in our world today to be witnesses and messengers of the gospel. Here in our own parish at St. Henry, we have a wonderful parishioner, Steve Fouche, who works for the Metro Police Department. And he reached out to me to let me know about the work that he and a group of community police officers have been doing right here in Nashville in a very challenging neighborhood since 2017. And I actually had the opportunity to sit down with Steve and with some of the residents of that community recently to do an interview. Following my video, you'll have a presentation video of our conversation together. It gives us an opportunity to think about what we can each do to help make our world a better place. I think about the prayer of St. Francis and the line that we hear in it over and over again, that we are to seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that's what I've been trying to practice these days, to seek first to understand other people's points of view, and then to seek to be understood. I hope that this will be an opportunity for you to expand perhaps a bit that opportunity to understand others so that we can grow together as a community in our world today. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and let His face shine upon you. Well, good morning, everyone. I want to take a moment to welcome everybody this morning, and we have some special guests on my back porch at the rectory. We're on the screen porch where I normally do my morning prayer. And one of our parishioners who works on the Metro Police Department, Steve Fouche, is here. And I'm going to let Steve let you introduce our guest today. And Steve is going to tell us a little bit about the work that he has been doing right here in our own community. So.
Sure. Well, today our guests are Cheryl Cox and her daughter Carla Cox. The way we first met was a couple of years ago through what's called the Community Engagement Program. This was a program that was, the beginning of it was fostered by the Department of Justice. Also, an individual named Bob Haase was one of the people that kind of helped us get up and running. Bob Haase was the former police commissioner of Boston who did a similar program in the city of Boston that was very, very successful in terms of building deeper relationships with the community, and also through those deeper relationships and through that bigger alliance with the community had drastic reductions in crime as well. So through my department, through Chief Anderson, Deputy Chief Johnson, Commander Corman, and my Sergeant Jason Picanzo, along with my team, we started this community engagement program in the neighborhood of 40th Avenue North in Clifton. Before we started this program in that area, I would say that the neighborhood at 40th and Clifton was probably had probably the highest crime rate of the entire West Precinct. Wow. It was a type of neighborhood that most folks can't even imagine living in. That quite frankly no human being should have to live in. We had, before we started this program, there was rampant drug dealing, which of course brings the typical, weapons, shootings, murders, robberies, aggravated assaults, and so on. To give you an idea of how bad it was, the police wouldn't even go in there unless we were 2 or 3 deep, meaning 2 or 3 of us at a time, just for officer safety. But even then, the police would really only go in there when we needed to go in there, when there was a call, when something happened. Other than that, I think for the most part, we kind of stayed out of that neighborhood. There was really no relationships. Would you agree with this? We really didn't have any relationships with the members of that community. And to say that it was a high crime area is not to say that there was a bunch of bad people living there. Most of the people living there were really wonderful people. But I think they were kind of held hostage by the criminal element and the lack of unity with the police. So I think would it be fair to say that y'all kind of felt helpless, kind of caught in between? In fact, just to give you an idea, the crime was so bad that there's one lady that lives right across the way from Cheryl, a woman who's about 70 years old, was actually sleeping on the floor. She had a bed. She was sleeping on the floor because a stray bullet had come through the walls of her apartment, and she was afraid of being killed while sleeping in the middle of the night. That's the kind of fear and crime that was going on in this neighborhood. Am I summing it up about right?
Absolutely, that's correct.
Okay. So, so how did we change that? This community engagement program has a lot of moving parts to it, but at its very core, it's actually very simple. At its core, community engagement is about developing deep relationships with the people in the neighborhood, deep relationships that are built on love, respect, and certainly trust. All these things I think we're missing with the police for certain and with the residents. But together we built these deep relationships on love, respect, and trust. And through these relationships, we built a deep alliance with the neighborhood. So before, it was basically the police against everybody else. There was absolutely no relationship. Where now what we've done is that we walk hand in hand. The police and the residents are very close, very tight-knit community, so that the small troublemakers of the neighborhood, the small criminal element, either begins to behave or they leave. So let me just quickly touch upon the crime stats and the difference that we made in doing this. Before we started this program in 2017, for example, we had 3 homicides in that same neighborhood. In 2018, I'm sorry.
Three homicides in the course of a year?
In the course of 1 year, we had 3 people murdered.
Okay. Wow.
Okay. Now, in 2018, 1 year later after starting this program, we had 1 murder. Last year, we had 0 murders. Nobody was killed in this neighborhood. We also had a 40% reduction in violent crime and a 40% reduction in overall crime. Now, these are just numbers, of course. Obviously, the 3 people that weren't killed last year, that's real people. Those are people that are still alive today because of our efforts. And I say our, by the way, I don't just mean police. I mean our efforts, the residents and the police working together. But a 40% reduction in crime, to put that into perspective, if a police department has a 5 or 10% reduction in crime, that's newsworthy. That'll be all over the news. The politicians will be bragging about it. And the police department, rightfully so, will be expressing their successes. A 40% reduction in crime is unheard of. I'm not going to say it's never happened across the entire United States. There are places where community engagement has been implemented, but for the most part, a 40% reduction in crime is a small miracle. In fact, our success was so profound that the Department of Justice, out of all the police departments across the entire United States, the Department of Justice asked our team to be represented by my sergeant, Jason Picanzo, and by our commander, the West Precinct Commander, David Corman, to go with our deputy chiefs and Chief Anderson to the International Chief of Police Association convention in Chicago this past, I think it was October. This is where all the chiefs of police from all around the world, not just the United States, but all around the world come together and discuss policing and the challenges and the successes and try to learn from each other. The Department of Justice asked our team to be represented at this convention to teach, to show our successes and how we succeeded in this area, to basically help other departments across the nation and quite frankly across the world on how to better police, not just to, and I say better policing in terms of both better relationships with the community as well as drastic reductions in crime. So that's kind of a background on our community engagement efforts and why we're here today.
Wonderful. How many people are on your team, Steve?
There are 6 police officers like me, and then we have 1 sergeant who's...
Okay.
Now, I will say this, I always say that our commander is our big boss, of course,
right.
But he has taken a special ownership in our team, so I look at him also as a teammate, respectfully. Okay. He's my big boss, but he's also definitely a teammate.
So you're a team of 7 or 8 police officers?
On the ground, 6
6
officers and 1 sergeant.
Okay. And Cheryl,
Yes.
can I ask a question? So He mentioned trust, respect. Those are key qualities of how the police have become more effective. How long did it take for that trust to develop, and what led you all to have trust?
Well, for me, it didn't take long at all because me and Steve, we kicked it off mighty quick. We took a little time for the other neighbors to join in with me, but once they seen that I started building a relationship with Officer Steve, and everyone just started coming along with me.
Why did you trust him? What led to that trust?
Because I'm the kind of person I am. I want to say that I don't see people because he have a badge. I see people for who they is by their heart and the way they talk, and not because of who they are or what they is. I don't discriminate against nothing like that. So, I mean, people was always saying, why you talking to the police, or I'm snitching, or I'm doing this. It didn't bother me. People don't say what they want to say anyway. But once I got in and started talking to Steve, and everybody said, oh, she talking to Steve. They seen how the kind of relationship me and Steve had, and then they start seeing, and they just start coming along, talking to Steve, and knowing that he's the kind of good person he really was. That he wasn't really out there being a cop. That he was really out there trying to get our community the way that we want it to be.
And it's fair to say, because I watched the video link of the story that you did, it's a changed place, isn't it?
Yeah, very changed.
You feel safer?
Very safe.
Yeah, there's a more, I heard a number of you all talk about you can sit on your porches now without fear.
We couldn't sit on the porch. I mean, I done had bullets come through hit my doorstep, hit my windows. I mean, I done seen bullets go in people's houses. I done seen, one shootout was right up by my porch, shooting towards the alley. And we had to hit the floor. I done had a knee replacement, a shoulder replaced, all due with falling, trying to get away from just running. I mean, not just me, other neighbors too.
Wow.
I had knee replacements and shoulder replaced trying to run and get away. So, I mean, it was sad. I mean, I done seen trucks flipped over where they shooting at each other. Trucks just flipped over there and there, people running everywhere, children running. We trying to get up the children. I mean, it was real bad.
I think I've had my car shot like 3 or 4 times up there. And I don't mean like one bullet, I mean like 3, 4 bullets at a time, back window. One busted my radiator, like 2, 3 windows. So yeah.
And do you think that was just a random attack, or was it, what do you think was the...
I don't know what the issue was at hand of what caused but I was in my mother's and I was getting ready to come out the door to leave and seen them walking with big guns and rush back in the house.
They're shooting at each other, or okay.
And it's not the people that live there, it's people that didn't live there. I mean, they come up there to sell their drugs and do what they thought they wanted to do. And then when you get tired. I mean, you want to come outside, you want to sit down on your porch, you pay rent, and you can't even come outside, and your children can't come out and play, you can't have no company. People wouldn't even come up there. Now, we're not coming up there, we can't come to your house, you got to come to our house. But now we can have company. I mean, we sit out, and we enjoy where we live at now.
Wow. Right now, of course, in our country, there's a lot of social unrest. You've probably seen some of that on the news. Do you think that what is happening in your neighborhood, do you think that would be successful around the country and other communities if we had more of these types of relationships?
Community engagement.
Very successful. Very.
Okay.
I mean, because, like I said, not just Officer Steve, we associate with all the officers that's come up there, now, and we all have a relationship, and I think that's a good thing, because even though people say what they say, it doesn't really matter because they don't live there. And they can say what they want to say. But, I mean, it's peacefully. It's very peaceful. And yes, we can call now and they'll come out. When they didn't, we used to call, they wouldn't come out. They take the time. I done seen police come up there and they was running, trying to get away.
The police were?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So now, I mean, it's nice now. I mean, it really is.
I am so grateful to hear good stories right now because in our country and in our world, it's so easy for people to be divided against each other. And that seems to get most of the attention. And I'm glad to hear that there are places in our world where people are still connecting as human beings and we're overcoming some of those divisions and misunderstandings in our world. So, Steve, thank you for what you're doing. I've known Steve for a few years now, since I've been here at St. Henry. And one of the things that struck me from the very beginning is you're a very spiritual person and you see things at a deep level. And I know you've done some writing about it, but you're always looking for how can I make this situation and this person better. You bring it to an understanding part, and that makes a huge difference.
I think one of the things that I've learned about community engagement that, because sometimes you say, well, what do you do in community engagement? What's your daily, what do you do? Like every day, what's your minute by minute thing? And one thing that I try to live by, and Lord knows I fall short many times, so I promise you I don't pretend to walk on water by any means, but in spite of all my faults, one thing that I try to come back to every day is that I always try to make, this is something a Buddhist monk once said, that the most important person in your life is the person right in front of you. It's not, yes, I have a wife and kids, and I have certain people that have a very special place in my heart, but if they're not with me in this moment, it's the person in front of me that I try to make them the most important person in my world. And when I'm in my community, so much of community engagement is really about servitude. The servitude is the fundamental basis for what we do and how this has all come about. I've even had the criticism, believe it or not, by some folks, even a couple police officers that are good police officers. I'm not knocking them, but it is a different style of policing, and sometimes folks are a little, resistant to change. But and they sometimes call us social workers, because when I go into my community, if somebody needs something, I do everything I can to fill that need. And so let me give you an example. I'll give you a bunch of examples just real quick, but if people are low on food, we have a food pantry at the West Precinct that we'll take them to. We also have the Fraternal Order Police has what we call a CPR program that has funded almost literally everything we've ever come to them for. So we have $100 gift cards. In other words, if somebody comes to me and they need food, I can take them to the food pantry. But let's say they also need some other food items that we don't have. I can take them to Kroger and go with them and go shopping and use a $100 gift card to get what they need. I've had young parents that are struggling that they don't have clothes for their children. We've gone out and bought clothes for their children. We've bought beds for people that there was a 70-year-old man sleeping on the floor. He was crippled and sleeping on the floor for 3 years. And we discovered this. We were actually went and gotten some groceries. We were coming into his apartment, and I realized he didn't have a bed. I called the Fraternal Order Police, and we got him a nice orthopedic bed. Wow. This is across the board of people who are, behind on their rent payments, on electric bills. We plug them into St. Vincent de Paul. My wife Susan is, of course, a member of, St. Vincent de Paul, which for folks who aren't Catholic, that's a Catholic charity that works out of the church. They have spent thousands and thousands of dollars helping people. The bottom line is, the reason this works, and you say, well, you're not a social worker. Well, the benefits are that when you serve people, in my opinion, there's no better way to convert a stranger into a friend with deep levels of love and trust than when you serve their needs. I mean, it's amazing when somebody doesn't even know you and you find out that they need food and you go get them food, or you go get them clothes, or you help them out on their rent. People are almost in shock. Like, the police officer did what? It's such a shock to so many people, but the bottom line is, by serving the needs of others, which is a spiritual thing, By serving the needs of others, we create deep relationships. And then when we have these deep relationships, the ironic thing is, even though it doesn't seem that it's the responsibility of police to do these things, the irony is that when we serve the needs of others, regardless of what it is, in the end, you achieve police-type results that are absolutely astounding. Like I said, a 40% reduction in violent crime, no murders. That comes from the deep alliance that we built with the community, and we built that alliance through serving their needs on a daily basis.
Wow. You know, to me, the whole purpose of law enforcement to begin with is to create safer communities so that there isn't crime. And if it's an effective strategy, it's too bad we don't do more of it.
Right.
You know, because it sounds to me like this would be a pathway forward that could make a real difference everywhere. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being here. And so I was going to ask the question, Steve, how do you create trust? But you already answered it. By being of service and by making connections, right? Any other things that you've discovered in your own work that you think, if I do these things, it creates trust in a community?
I think the bottom line is that what works is this element of servitude. You know, we say to protect and serve, and to me, serve is whatever that need is. We don't decide how to serve. We go out and we discover needs, and when we find the needs, we figure out how to serve that need, whether it's, you know, sometimes I've used my own money. I've probably spent over $3,000 of my own money in my community, but I've spent tens of thousands of dollars from the Fraternal Order of Police and thousands surely from St. Vincent de Paul. But I'll tell you one thing, on a personal level, the way it really comes back to me is it's amazing during this time of unrest and what happened in Minneapolis, which was absolutely horrible. You know, the police were as horrified. I was as horrified, and I can assure you every police officer I've talked to was just as horrified as the public in what happened in Minneapolis. And, you know, there's a lot of challenges in my job as a police officer, but there's only one time, the only time that I've ever can honestly say I hate being a cop is during these times where I'm downtown in riot gear and we're having all these protests come by and people are screaming at me directly, calling me a racist pig and, you know, murderer and all these things that are not true of me or quite frankly of the police that I'm standing next to. It's the hardest thing to take. And I understand the anger, don't get me wrong. I'm not mad at the protesters. I don't appreciate the violent ones that we had that first Saturday where they're throwing bricks at us and being dangerous. But I certainly understand the anger, and I certainly, as a police officer who wants to uphold the Constitution, I certainly support people's First Amendment rights to protest. But it hurts deeply to feel the hatred and the anger coming straight on me for something that was done
Someone else.
and in a city, 1,000 miles away. But here's the irony. When I go back to my neighborhood, I would have never have thought that I would be saying this, but I actually go back to 40th and Clifton to get healing. I mean, you know, Carla and Sheryl, both at different times, when I was downtown with riot gear on, were calling me, hey, we're praying for you. We're thinking about you. You know, we miss you. And that is so healing in a time like this that, you know, the irony is these same relationships come back to me and heal me in a time when I need it.
I appreciate that very much. And you know, the thing that you made me think of the Beatitudes, because one of the Beatitudes at the end is, blessed are those who suffer persecution for the sake of righteousness, when they insult you and hate you and utter all kinds of evil against you because of me. You know, and sometimes when we're trying to do the right thing, we suffer for it. And know that in those moments that you are close to Christ. You're not alone in that. But he also says, blessed are the peacemakers. And so we're all trying to build a world that is more peaceful, so we are connected with each other as sisters and brothers, right?
Right.
So.
My biggest prayer for this nation is that, you know, I always come back to Martin Luther King, and maybe it sounds cliche, but, you know, that we need to, you know, judge each other on the content of our character, not the color of our skin. And it's not just the way white folks like me should approach the black community, but I think the same thing is true when we judge police. You can't take a few instances of police brutality, as horrible as it may be, and judge the million-plus police officers across the nation as being in the same boat.
And if they see us talking to Steve, you know, and not just Steve, you know, all the officers, you know, maybe they'll say, well, hey, our officers not bad, you know, and they're not. I mean, that's what I be trying to get to people. People come out and look you up and you talk to all officers are not bad. You can't take one officer do something wrong and put it on the other one. You just can't do that.
Right.
You know, you can't.
And it's the relationship here is incredibly powerful. It's one thing I learned, because I have to be honest, when we started this community engagement program, I didn't know what I was doing. I really didn't. But Cheryl was the first one who really reached out to me and took a chance and developed that relationship with me. And through that relationship, it encouraged other people in the neighborhood to reach out to me as well. She sort of pioneered or led the way. And now it's created something that really is very unique. And I wish we could replicate this in other parts of the country.
It only takes one in a neighborhood.
Wow.
Only one.
One person to respond positively, or
One person.
yes. Wow. Wow. And that's important. It creates connections and trust. Yeah. I think sometimes the biggest challenge we human beings face is our own wounded passions. Fear, anger, hurt, those kinds of things cause us to mistrust one another.
Yes.
And if we can be healed of those things and see the faces of the people who are around us and recognize we're all on this journey together, it seems to me that the solution to all the great problems of our day ultimately has to be spiritual. I mean, there's some level at which, without the spiritual awareness that we're all created in the image and likeness of God, that we're not going to get beyond this time of divisiveness. So.
It's interesting what you just said. It reminds me of something Father Gregory Boyle from Tattoos on the Heart.
Yes.
In his book, he said something like, it's hard to hate somebody you know.
That's right.
And I think that's what's been so powerful about the relationships that we have, is that once we got to know each other, the fear and the misunderstandings kind of melted away, and we realized that we're really just all human beings. We're all kind of in this together. We're all children of God, and we need each other.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the things I will say. I'm going back in my mind 10 years ago when the flood happened in 2010. When something like that happened and people had become, I would say, more isolated from each other. But when their electricity went off and they couldn't go anywhere, people walked out their doors, they started meeting their neighbors sometimes for the first time. And so my prayer and hope is that that somehow God will help us to move beyond the difficult circumstances we're living with in the world today, including the pandemic, and help us to reconnect.
I actually think the tornado quite did that, because everybody mixed in and came together.
Was your neighborhood also hit by the tornado?
Not mine. My lights was out for quite a bit of time, but it wasn't just overbearing. But everybody, we all got together, went North Nashville, helped people out. Everybody just engaged in everything together.
That's what we have to get back to.
And then you turn around, not even a month later, and here's this, when we was just all together. It's I don't understand.
Well, I don't underestimate the impact that the stresses of a pandemic have also had on our culture and society. I've noticed myself and the people that I'm closest to increases in irritation or fear about different things, so anxiety. So, well, thank you all very much for being here today, Cheryl, Carla. Glad to get to know you all in person.
Thank you.
And Steve, deeply grateful for the work you do and for your presence in our community too. So
Thank you, Father, for having us.
we have some, in addition to Steve, I just have to add, we have some great police officers that are in our community at St. Henry, and I'm extremely grateful for you guys. So
Thank you.
Thank you. And God bless y'all, and have a good day today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.